Okay, so here we go, continuing on the talk about paradise, at least as I see it. And you'll have to forgive me and be patient with me, as I am not so much of a tech wizard and always understanding devices and that. So I apparently had too many videos on my storage, so that's why it was cutting me short. At least I think that was the reason. But continuing off of what I was saying in my last video on honesty and freedom to speak our truth in my paradise, um, our paradise as I see it. um, we'll see. Maybe my paradise might match up quite a bit with yours. There's always going to be some differences, but we'll see as we carry on. But anyways, everyone will be free to speak their minds and hearts all the time, in the now, in the moment, to say what they want to say and do it without shame or any hesitation, because it's being real and honest and true. And yes, that may cause some disruptions at the start and be a little bit messy to begin with, but it's a course correction, and a very necessary course correction that we need, that we require to go forward into paradise. So at first there's going to be a shake-up, like the ship is going into the iceberg very soon, and we're not going to just like sort of tweak the steering wheel a little bit, because we'll still hit the iceberg. We're going to crank on that steering wheel as hard as we can in order to miss the iceberg. And this is what we're experiencing right now in the world, and why things seem to be getting so messy, in my opinion. So the ship, when you crank the wheel like that, anybody that's ever been aboard a ship or any kind of a vehicle that has a steering wheel in it, it's going to shake and rattle and sway quite drastically. But you won't hit the iceberg. And this is why we're seeing the kinds of shaking going on in this world right now, so that we don't hit an iceberg. And so once we've established that, like that everybody's speaking their minds and their hearts all the time, and the smoke clears and the dust settles, we now have a much more truthful and beautiful and pleasant way of living. And when people continue to speak their minds and hearts, it'll be a lot less disruptive, because now things are purged and course has been corrected, and we're able to carry on more harmoniously. So you see the adjustments, the tweaking of the wheel are a lot less drastic, and so the ship just sails along smoothly, and it doesn't need that drastic course correction anymore. We've set things right, and we're straight with each other, and we have a much greater understanding of each other. And so we all know where we're at, and we're up front open about things, and that's very important in my world, to be transparency. So again, I guess one of the ways I can talk about my paradise world, and I will at times, as I am now, is to talk about what is not paradise for me. And so this is one of the things that I see in the world right now as it stands, this very earth, that hasn't been exactly paradise, is the lack of transparency at all levels. So it's not just in government or in big business, but it's right down to the individual level. If people aren't transparent in their most micro elements of their lives, then how can we expect the people in, near the top of the pyramid or whatever to be any more transparent than we are with ourselves and with those closest to us, our family, our partners, our loved ones? So this goes along with what I was saying about being all about truth all the time, is the truth that no matter what level we're talking about in society, in civilization, whatever sphere it is, or status, or what have you, the micro to the macro, that they're going to be in total balance and harmony with each other. And in fact, they always are. So that's what I was just saying. But they're going to be in balance in a much more, in a higher level, or joyful, benevolent level, so that instead of being in agreement, like, and essentially in kind of a mess at the individual level, and then a mess at the top, they're going to have their house in order at the individual level, and then also at the very higher echelons. So, and you could even extend that out to higher dimensions, as I mentioned in some of my past videos, that we are multi-dimensional, is part of my truth anyway, of human beings, and that there are parts of ourselves or other people that are actually us, but living and breathing and functioning in higher dimensional realities at this moment, and it's part of our job to bring those higher selves into this self right here now. So we're all like spread out, going from to the lowest, which could very well be right here in 3D Earth, to the highest level of ourselves, which some may call our what's the word that Ismail Perez calls it? Celestial. Our celestial selves. So what we think of as gods and goddesses, they are us, we are them, just in another dimension, but they're actually here now. So let's bring more of those qualities into the here and now, and less of the qualities that have caused a great deal of war and sorrow and misery, or that just keep us down, as being less than we can be. So continuing that line of thought, that everyone is free to be as they are and to speak their minds, and all of that. Now, because everything's opened up and purged, reset, we're being straight with each other. And there's no longer spouses that are just keeping up a pretense, like, oh, we've got this perfect marriage because we've got all of these things on the list that are more surface level, superficial crap, essentially. They're just on the surface, their skin, the skin, but what's going on underneath the skin. So instead of that, everything that's going on the inside here is known between the couple, and we're okay with that. So then all people say, well, we can't create that kind of a world because we're going to have all these couples breaking up, and that's going to break up families and so forth and so forth. So what you're saying to me is that you would rather continue the lie and the distrust and the hell, essentially, hell on earth. Let's continue the hell on earth because it's just easier to keep continuing on than to turn it into heaven on earth. What I'm talking about is creating heaven on earth. So yes, like I said, it's going to create a bit of a chaos at first for a short time, and I promise, for a short time, temporary. But where we will end up will be heaven on earth if we do this right, and we will. So not to have any illusions about what I'm getting at regarding paradise as I see it, it's equated with heaven on earth. It starts with us. It's not going to be dictated to us. It's coming from within us by making these very important changes and evolving guidelines, let's say, not laws, not imposing laws on some deviant, delinquent. We're not, and by the way, that's also going to be a part of, or is a part of my ideal paradise, is that everyone treats each other with dignity and gives them the benefit of the doubt, for being mature and capable of, and understanding key principles and so forth. So we're not going to talk down to anyone. We're not going to treat each other like irresponsible children and belittle each other. And our self-talk is not going to be that way either. We're not going to belittle ourselves, keep ourselves small by thinking of ourselves as, oh, how do I know any better? I'm just this or that. Well, you're only this or that as long as you keep telling yourself that you are. If we stop that kind of inner banter, and to me it's just very actually destructive or counterproductive at the very least, to keep talking about ourselves as if, oh, we're just an animal, a smart animal. We're so much more, and that's going to be well known in my paradise as well, that we didn't descend from apes apes descended from us, or at least were created alongside of us or whatever, but we actually came from a higher place and descended down into the reality that we're in, and everything along with that are versions of what came from that higher dimension or reality. So everyone is going to be aware of these things that I'm talking about, of where we came from. Everyone will know where we came from, and therefore they will know why they are here and how to optimize their time, for lack of a better word, and so that they're not, spinning their wheels all the time. The car is moving forward, constantly moving forward. So we will evolve. We've been, say, evolving like this. We'll now evolve like this at a greatly accelerated rate. So this is also why, in my opinion, I believe people have said in the past that once we get to a certain dimension, which right now we're ascending from the third to the fifth, and we're in the way station or fourth dimension in between, that once we get to a high enough dimension, which is probably the fifth dimension, that we can then quickly go from, instead of like continuing, like I said, like this, we can quickly go from the fifth and like up much higher, if we're ready for that or desire that. So it always comes down to in any dimension, and will also be the bottom line in my paradise, that the question, okay, we could probably break into a lot of questions in my paradise, but the main question that'll needs to be addressed before almost everything, besides the golden rule, is this following the golden rule would be the number one, but would be, what do you want? What do I want at any given time? And so that's going to be an evolving thing, right? As we evolve and allow ourselves to evolve more quickly, what we desire is going to evolve too. So first you look at what do you truly want and desire given where you're at, the level of consciousness you're at right now. And you recognize that, okay, this is what I really want right now. And then go for it as best you can, while at the same time not having any expectations that it has to look a certain way, that it's going to look a certain way, because our ego mind tells us all the time, or envisions things from its point of view. But then when we actually get what it was envisioning, or get to that place that spirit takes us to, that, oh, okay, this is what you really want, so then the universe kicks in and like will deliver it to you eventually when you're focused on something, especially intensely focused. And that's, for me, another truth of how it works. So then when you actually get it, you're there, you're like, you recognize it, oh, this is what I was after. But you also see at the same time, oh, okay, well, you can look at this and that as different than I thought it would be. But, it is actually, when you look at it, it's like, oh, okay, all things considered, this is probably better than the way that I had originally envisioned it. Sometimes there are things that, you might say are bad, that you didn't expect would be a part of the good thing. But nonetheless, the place that it takes you to is also setting you up for something even greater. That's often the case. So back to the focus of this talk. In paradise, we'll all be, we'll all be focused on, yes, service to others. How can I be of service to others? But at the very same time, and again, like I said, there's got to be balance in everything, in all aspects of the self, so that while you're focused on that, you're also pursuing what you truly want and desire as a person and an individual. But you see, the difference is that you're coupling it and tempering your thoughts, words, and actions with wisdom. And in this case, it's the wisdom that we're all one, and we're not at odds or truly competing with each other, or we're not this race and that race, or we're not, yes, we're playing roles and have different appearances and whatnot, but we're essentially made of the same stuff and from the same source. So coupled with that wisdom, when we're pursuing our desires, there's so much that we can experience and enjoy in pursuing our desires that we don't need to do all these things that are, harmful to others. That's just not at all necessary or a good idea or truthful or so forth. Not benevolent. Wise people have said in the past that the road to hell was paved with good intentions. And that is true as long as we continue to pursue our interests without properly reflecting on wisdom, greater truths, and so that has to be integrated into paradise as well. That also relates to the whole idea of, with great power comes great responsibility, and all of that, Spider-Man stuff, like that. It's all related and connected. So, and also the true meaning of freedom, what true freedom really is. Does that mean we're irresponsible? No, then it wouldn't be true freedom. You're not being truly free as long as you deny the truth or the greatest profound truths. So, for instance, if the truth is that you love your wife and you wish to honor your wife, and you have certain agreements with your wife, or could be husband or partner, whatever, and then all of a sudden somebody flips a switch and say, oh, here you go, now you're totally free to do whatever you want to do, and go to it. And so you proceed to just, go and mess around with a whole bunch of other men or women or whatever, and you're totally unfaithful, or being disrespectful to your wife. And so somebody says, yeah, but that's freedom. Okay, but so is what you're saying that you don't love your wife, or you don't respect your wife? Is that part of your truth or whatever? If that's true, then I guess that really would be being free in doing what you did. But then you get what you ask for. Then, like, okay, if you want to live kind of like a a loveless existence, or sorry, I'm searching for a better term here. If you want to not have that kind of experience where you feel this like really deep bond of connection with somebody, and then you have certain agreements that you stick to, and or at least be open to evolving with that person, then okay, then you're sacrificing that to have this other type of freedom. But that's in your free will to do that. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that you get what you ask for. So in the previous example, the problem with that, and why I say it's not really being free, is that if that wasn't in your agreement, because this is part of the transparency and the greater wisdom and honesty that needs to be upheld. And it's not laws that some authority is imposing on you. It's kind of like, if you're going to make an omelet, you got to include eggs. So if you want a certain kind of reality or experience, you're going to need to include some key components. And what you do with that, if you want to add some salt and pepper, seasonings, onions, whatever else to it, then go to it. Great. That's personal preference. But you're going to need to recognize some sort of cosmic truths and principles in relationships. And so for me, one of them would be the transparency and the agreement before you engage in anything that's different than, or rather, before you do anything else with someone else in a partnership, you need to have certain things set straight and agreed to. So in the example that I used, if somebody just got promiscuous and was tearing it up with a bunch of other people, and that hadn't been a part of the agreement, then you're doing your wife or husband a disservice, and therefore we go from heaven back into hell. So in order to maintain heaven, what ideally needs to happen is that if somebody wanted to do that kind of a thing, or I could use any kind of example. It doesn't have to do with sex. It could be, say, somebody wanted to go bowling every night, and they hadn't talked to their wife about that, and then all of a sudden they just disappear at a certain time every night, and then maybe the wife wants to watch a movie with her husband on a certain night or whatever, but you can't because he's always gone. So anyways, there's no balance. It's also not being respectful and honoring the wisdom of having balance and the strength of balance, where the power lies in that. So do we want to be powerful? Yes. I'm sure everybody would answer yes. Then let's have balance. Balance between the masculine and the feminine, the dark and the light. On it goes in duality. And so by honoring the balance there, that okay, for that relationship, sometimes it's give and take. You sometimes, okay, I'm going to go bowling on this night, and then another night I'll watch a movie with the missus and so forth. So and that's how relationships work best, is that we have this give and take, um, and there's a balance. But I mean, we're ultimately doing what we really want to do. You know, if we have some value for whatever it is, then we're willing to do whatever it takes to make it work. So, anyways, that starts off with being honest with ourselves and with each other from the get-go, and then forming an agreement, and then we can change our agreement at any time, but we need to do that in an open, honest way. And so that will always be a part of my paradise. And from there, we will actually live in a much more joyful, peaceful, loving, fun world and way, in my opinion, because now everybody is doing what they really want to do, and they're not just doing things because they feel obligated or they're being pressured, and so forth. They're not just following obligations or what they feel like they're supposed to do rather than what they really want to do, because they were upfront and honest with people in the first place. If they really didn't want to agree to a certain thing because they have the awareness and wisdom to recognize that, oh, that includes these things, but it also includes some other things over here that are like a deal breaker for me. You know, whereas I might otherwise agree to it, and it's not worth it for me because I want to be freed up enough to do this and that. So they'll be upfront with people. So it avoids a lot of these, emotional misgivings and ill feelings that are created by agreeing to things that we don't, because we weren't honest enough with ourselves and loving ourselves and respectful of ourselves, honoring ourselves. We agree to things that we shouldn't have agreed to. And so we get what comes, right? What we ask for from that. That's part of creating heaven on earth, is not making these sorts of agreements. And there's so much more that I want to say and I'm going to say about paradise, but this video is already at the half-hour mark, and I think I should probably keep breaking these into